Hello and welcome to the Spice Rack. I'm Shannon Spicer and I'd like to add a little spice to your quilting. This is the final week, week 12, of my series, the Spicerack Sampler. I feel I've saved the best for last. We are going to construct the Storm at Sea block. You can download a copy by following the link in the description. I loved this block the minute I saw it. I love that it creates an almost circle with squares and rectangles. I wouldn't say this block is for the beginner, but if you've been following along with this series, you should have all the skills you need. And this is why I saved it for the end. There are many patterns out there for this block, and from what I can tell, they all use either foundation paper piecing or paper templates. I really don't like paper templates, but I do enjoy foundation paper piecing. But I know that not everyone does, and I wanted this whole set of blocks to be standard quilting piecing methods. So let's get started. If we take a close look at this block, we can see that the center piece is a square in a square in a square, and we've made those before in past blocks, so you'll know how to do that. And then on all four corners are also square in square blocks, also called economy blocks. And then the final piece for this block are four pieces that are diamonds in a rectangle block. So that will be the new skill that you'll learn. Let's create the center block first. So this is our center piece, and we will always work on opposing sides. So we will sew this triangle onto this side and this triangle onto this side, and then press open and trim. So right sides together, these two sides sewn, pressed open, and I like to trim off the little dog ears. And then we're going to turn it and do the same thing on the remaining sides. So these two pieces to the opposing sides. So now we will sew on the next round, the final round for the center square, the gold, and I'm using Moda Bella Solids in mustard. And we repeat for the other sides, the remaining sides, sewing opposing sides, sewing the triangles on. So here we have the center block complete. It is a square and a square and a square. It's all trimmed up nicely according to the measurements of the pattern, and we're going to set it aside because we don't need it until the final construction. Next, we're going to do the four corner pieces, which are also square and square blocks, economy blocks, but we're going to be using the stitch and flip method. So for the stitch and flip method, we're going to take our small squares and put them up in the corner, opposing corners. We lay them down right sides together as always. We need a marking pen. I like to use the friction pen. And we mark a line from corner to corner. You'll stitch on that line, and you'll do the same on all four pieces. And then we'll go on to the next step. So now we have four squares with our corner squares sewn on, and I press them just a bit, and now we have to trim off the excess. And we've done this before on blocks in the past in this series. You'll want to line up your line of stitching with a 1/4 inch mark on your ruler. The other side, and then we will press these pieces open. And I'm going to once again demonstrate a couple of my very favorite tools, the wool pressing mat and the tailor's clapper. These little items really need to lie really flat. So I press my iron and then press with the tailor's clapper. I could press open this side while I'm waiting for that one. And then press on this other side. You could press on both at the same time. And I'll link to these items in the description below. I hardly ever find myself using starch because these items help me get such flat seams that I don't really need to. So we're going to do that with all 4 of our pieces. Okay, so now you have your piece that's nicely pressed open, trimmed and pressed, and now we need to take 2 more of these squares and do the remaining corners where we put it right side down, right sides together, and we'll draw with our marking pen. And yes, it will overlap that piece. That's what you want. So we line up the ruler. We line up the line of stitching with the 1/4 inch mark on the ruler and trim. Okay, and now just like before, we will press these open, nice and flat, and we have our square and square pieces, 4 of them for the corners. Okay, for the final portion, the final element, the diamond in the rectangle, we'll take 1 of these larger rectangles and we will have 4 of these smaller rectangles. And this is going to kind of be a stitch and flip. I guess it is a stitch and flip, but it's definitely modified because of the rectangular shape. So what we're going to do first is we take one of these size and we fold it in half and just pinch it at the top so that it has a little mark halfway through. So we're going to do that on all of these. Okay, all 4 of our pieces are marked. I'm going to set 2 of them aside for now because just like the square in a square, we're going to be working 2 sides at a time. We're going to be working on this side and this side, 2 opposing sides. And when we sew these sides and trim and press open, then we will work on the other 2. But first, we need to mark these with a marking pen because we need to know exactly where to sew, because with this we cannot sew from corner to corner. It won't work. So first, we are going to put a little mark, a 1/4 inch down on that little pressed seam. I have it where I can see the fold mark, and I'm putting a dot right there. 1/4 inch down, right on the little press mark. And now we need our other mark because we're going to connect the 2 dots for our sewing line. And this one is going to be 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom. So I've got 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and a 1/4 inch from the right. So 3/4 up and a 1/4 inch in. Right about there. Okay, I hope these dots show up well on camera. We've got 1 1/4 inch down there from the middle, and I pinched so I would know where the middle was, and 3/4 inch up and 1/4 inch in there at the bottom. And then I'm going to line my ruler up to the 2 dots, and I'm going to mark a line that goes through both dots and doesn't just connect but actually extends all the way to the edge of the fabric. So you can see there I didn't quite get it on that dot, but I can adjust that when I sew, and I've drawn the line all the way from the edge of the fabric all the way down. And I'm going to do the same on this one. And we place this here. These are the same width, so it should fit properly. You can pin if you'd like. Place that piece on there and sew along the line. And then you'll want to move this out of the way so you can do the other side. I would not overlap them like we do the squares, because your sewing line will get in the way. If you sewed on this line, you're going to sew on top of this. So just do one at a time, sew, and then fold it out of the way or press it, either way, and then sew the other one. But first we need to trim these, just like we do when we're doing square and a square. We're going to trim a 1/4 inch off away from the stitch line. So I'm lining up my stitch line with my 1/4 inch mark, and I'm trimming. And then when we press this open, it's going to be a very odd shape. It needed to be this shape so that it would cover this triangle. Believe me, I tried it with a different shape and size, and once you fold it open, it wasn't big enough. So I went for the full width of the piece, and so we have a little bit of this waist, and once we're all done, we're going to square it up and we'll have a little bit more waist. But they're chunks that you can use in other ways. Okay, so we have 4 of these pieces, and we're not going to trim it yet. We're going to turn them upside down, and we're going to do the opposing side. Same as before, sew on the line, and then we'll trim away and press open. Okay, so now we have 4 pieces where we have both sides pressed open, and again, they're a weird shape, but we're going to trim it down once we've got all 4 sides. And now we're going to get our other pieces and we're going to mark them for the other sides, and it's going to be marked the opposite way, so you can't mark it the same as we did before. It's going to be a little bit different. We will be folding them in half, just like before. Pinch so that you get that mark, and this time we're going to mark a 1/4 inch down on that crease, just like before, and then 3/4 inch up from the bottom, but a 1/4 inch in from the left side this time, not the right. That is how it is opposite. So I hope that shows up well. Got a little dot here at the top, 1/4 inch down, and a dot 1/4 inch in from the left, 3/4 inch up from the bottom. So you can mark the remaining pieces you have. That should be 8 more pieces of fabric in that fashion. And then we're going to connect those 2 dots and carry your line all the way to the edges, just like before. So I'm going to go around it. I'm going to go through and mark all my pieces of fabric. And then these are going to be for the remaining sides. This side here we'll sew, trim, fold it open, and then sew it on the other side, a new piece of fabric, and press open. Okay, so now we have 4 of these diamond shapes, but it doesn't look like a rectangle until we trim it. And it's definitely been trimmed as a diamond on the back because we trimmed all those pieces as we added each of these rectangles. But the way you're going to trim them is according to the size in the pattern, but in order to keep it straight, since it's such an odd shape, I would line up the tip of your diamond with a certain mark on your ruler. And your first cut you'll want to be a 1/4 inch away from your point. You should end up with being a 1/4 inch away on all sides. But for this first cut, I'm going to line up my 1/4 inch mark with this point, and then I'm going to make sure I've got one line on my ruler that goes through the center of the diamond. And once you have that piece, that side piece done, you can flip it around and use the measurement from the pattern on a square type ruler. So there we have it, a diamond in a rectangle. Okay, it doesn't quite fit on my screen here, but now we will construct it in either rows or columns. You could attach each row and then attach those rows together, or you could work in columns and then attach those columns together. I'm going to go ahead and go in rows. And now we will attach row 1 to row 2, and then those 2 to row 3. And I wanted to show you how I pressed these on the back. I felt like they naturally wanted to lie inward, so I pressed those inward, and then these two outward so that my seams will nest properly, and again these inward. There we have it, the finished Storm at Sea block. And like I said, this one does have some waste. We have quite a few off cuttings, but I think it's worth it if you really don't want to do paper piecing, foundation paper piecing, or if you don't want to cut out paper templates, then this is the way to go. I tried several different ways to work this out, and this was what I came up with. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Remember, you can download the pattern using the link in the description below. And I created some mock-ups on my blog with this block. But you know, if you've been following along, that I'm putting this block along with the other 11 into a sampler quilt. And here's a mock-up of that. But there's so many things you can do with just this one block. You can change up the coloring and really accentuate certain elements. It's a really neat design. Stay tuned for images of the finished quilt that I'm going to be making with all of these blocks together. And I'll have the whole set of blocks for sale for one price very soon. If you'd like to be alerted when that is available, sign up for my newsletter by following the link in the description. If you've been making these blocks along with me, I'd love to see them. You can email me pictures or tag me on Instagram or use my hashtag #SpicerackSampler. Thank you for watching, and check out my channel for tutorials for all 12 blocks in the series.